Hi everyone, I'm Physio Alex and welcome back to TSC Connect. Now today we are doing another Q&A. We recently did one with Physio Andrea who answered your questions about exercising with scoliosis. There were so many questions that asked about exercising with scoliosis surgery, especially after fusion surgery. So we decided to do a whole other Q&A and video dedicated to this topic. I've put all your questions together. Here we go. Okay, question number one is, how successful is surgery for a severe curve? Are there any major risks? Now, I can really only answer this question from a physio perspective and probably my own experience with scoliosis surgery as well. The most common type of scoliosis surgery we see is a posterior fusion approach where they enter from behind and they'll remove the discs where the major curve is and they put some bone graft and that whole part of the spine becomes fused, so in a straighter position, and that fusion is supported by some hardware like rods and screws. This type of surgery has been done for many years and I can say it is a very successful surgery where the risks are quite small. The only sort of complications that are generally seen is more things at the hospital where there could be signs of infection, where the scar is, things like blood clots or a lot of blood loss, during the surgery. A lot of my clients generally ask me, what's the risk of being paralyzed, and the sort of the first thing you think with spinal surgery, but those odds are extremely low. But the best thing to do is definitely to talk to your surgeon about this and get, proper stats, and also see if surgery is on the cards for you, what type of surgery the surgeon will do. Don't be afraid to ask questions. There are many different types, because that will very much dictate, perhaps any complications or recovery time and things like that. Okay, there were a group of questions asking sort of specifically after surgery, how long are you limited with movement? Is there a period of time you can't do exercise post-surgery? Now, one of the disadvantages of having to have a fusion surgery is that part of your spine will be limited. It will always be limited for the rest of your life. The body's very clever and will compensate using everything above and below the fusion to sort of allow you to move. But that is something to note. After surgery, you will not regain the exact same range of motion that you had beforehand. In terms of how long you can't exercise for, I guess that depends what exercise is for you. When we're looking at a full rehabilitation for scoliosis fusion surgery, truly it takes up to 6 months plus, up to a year for a full recovery. Now, definitely throughout the recovery, 1 week in hospital and then, starting some physio, especially scoliosis specific physio is important. That physio will sort of guide you exercise you can start with. To start with, it's all about, activating your core again. It's about learning how to stand, your new center of gravity, sitting, sort of endurance, some very gentle stretches. And, for the first 6 weeks, there's very limited spinal movement. And then the physio will progressively add more and more. Okay, the next question asked, does scoliosis progress after surgery? Where the fusion was, ideally no, that will not progress after surgery. The goal of surgery is to really prevent any curve progression and to also get a correction of the spine as well. So unless it's sort of a faulty fusion or something goes wrong with the hardware, which is very, very unlikely, no, that part of the spine will not progress. However, if you still have remaining curves above and below the fusion, and especially if you're still growing, yes, those curves could continue to progress. So that's why it's very important to monitor and get x-rays after surgery, generally every 6 months or whenever the surgeon wants to review, to ensure that those curves are stable, and to also do some scoliosis specific physio as well to really address those curves and ensure that they do stay stable. All right, the next few questions are asking specifically about exercise after the surgery, like any limitations with running, with weights, reformer, HIIT style. Is it okay to deadlift and barbell squat, and what's too heavy? And is there any real weight limit that you can't lift over? So it's perfectly fine to go back to any of those types of training. When it comes to scoliosis surgery, most surgeons will not recommend to go back to high level contact sports, and bungee jumping that just puts a lot of pressure on the fusion or the surgical site. Otherwise, you can return to any of those activities that were listed, but something to take into account is really what you used to do before surgery. If you already did some running, if you did weights training, it is very safe for you to go back to those activities. Generally sort of waiting to get clearance from your surgeon and to be guided by your physio to return to that, obviously starting your weights quite low and building up to what you used to do. So there's no magic number that you shouldn't go above, but things to maybe be a little bit more clever with, for instance, is when it comes to weights and putting a lot of compression on your back. Let's talk about specifically like barbell squats or barbell lunges. That does cause compression of the spine. It can put a lot of pressure, especially on the joints, the vertebrae below the fusion. So perhaps keeping those on the lighter side and focusing more on, front squats perhaps, or sumo squats where the load is not directly on the spine, doing your lunges, holding on to dumbbells instead. All right, questions asking about core exercises, ab exercises. I'm fused from mid back down, also had 5 surgeries. When it comes to core exercises, there will be one of the first few exercises that you actually do get back into through your rehab with your physio. But core exercises will depend in terms of which ones you can and can't do. May depend if you do have any residual curves and if you're working towards stabilizing those curves to ensure, you don't do exercises that bring you more into your scoliosis. So core exercises are generally very neutral positions when it comes to scoliosis. Sort of always knowing that your shoulders and your hips are facing the same direction, and they're not core exercises that involve a lot of getting out of that neutral range, like a lot of twisting sort of exercises, or a lot of sit-ups and crunches, exercises that really promote that flexion motion. So there's still plenty of options, and what we'll do is another YouTube video dedicated specifically for core exercises for fusion clients. So that will be coming up very soon. All right, that's the end of the Q&A. I hope that was helpful. Thank you to all of you who sent through your questions. Please share this video if you think it would be helpful to any friends or family. We're working really hard to share as much educational content about scoliosis on our YouTube channel. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.